Viewers, before this story unravels, drop your location and current time in the comments. Always fun seeing where you're watching from. Now picture this Florida dusk, that swampy humidity that makes the air feel like soup, and Matt Holden standing barefoot on his porch with a chipped coffee mug. His dog sprawled beside him, tails thumping lazily when he notices an envelope jammed into his gate. Not a bill, not junk mail, but the Palm Dunes Estates HOA seal staring back like it owned the horizon. Funny thing is, Matt never joined their HOA. He bought his 4 acres of oak and palmetto precisely to avoid them. Yet here it was, 3 pages of curfew orders typed in Times New Roman, like a bad middle school essay, declaring that all residents and visible lot occupants must remain indoors from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. for 3 weeks. Historians still argue whether the most absurd rules come from ancient emperors or modern HOAs. Matt figured he was looking at proof it was the latter. He called the number. On the line came Karen, brisk and smug, dripping with the confidence of someone who probably laminated her grocery lists. She told him his land fell within their influence zone. Influence zone, like he'd stumbled into a sci-fi novel. When Matt reminded her he didn't sign their bylaws, she cheerfully warned of security intervention. Sweet as antifreeze, she hung up before he could laugh in her face. By nightfall, Matt wasn't cowering indoors. He stepped outside with a flashlight and a wrench, planning only to grab a battery from his shed. 10 paces off the porch, he spotted them, 2 silhouettes at the tree-lined uniforms, black chest patches reflecting like fireflies on steroids. Evening, he called, calm but sharp. They barked back. HOA regulation numbers demanded he return indoors. He countered with the deed to his property, though admittedly waving paper at night isn't very effective. When the wiry one grabbed his arm, instinct took over. A quick twist, a pivot, and suddenly the guy was nursing a sore wrist while Matt stood steady. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone, just send a message. And he recorded it all on his phone, because if there's one thing more powerful than a wrench these days, it's video evidence. Moments later, an SUV rolled up, magnetic HOA patrol logos plastered on the side like a child's sticker book. Out stepped another wannabe officer in khakis and a tactical vest, barking about civil enforcement. Matt, beer steady and unamused, live-streamed every second while dialing the sheriff. For context, did you know medieval villages used curfew bells to force people indoors after dark? The HOA wasn't ringing bells, but the spirit of nonsense was alive and well. Within minutes, the real Deputy Ramirez arrived, looked at Matt's footage, and told the HOA clowns they had no authority beyond their cul-de-sac. If they touched Matt again, he'd be cuffing them. The fake guards scattered like raccoons caught in a flashlight beam. That night, Matt lay awake, one eye on the cameras, one hand near his phone. He wasn't rattled, not exactly, but he knew Karen. Power-hungry leaders don't retreat, they regroup. The next day, as Matt tightened a hinge on his back gate, he heard engines crunching gravel, 2 trucks, and a matte black Suburban rolling up his driveway. Out stepped 6 men, cargo pants and boots, faces worn by desert sun and dust. His old unit. Troy, his former sergeant, clapped him on the shoulder like no years had passed. "Thought you might call in the cavalry," Troy said. Matt grinned, half relieved, half embarrassed. Didn't mean for this to turn into an op. They laughed, but the mood sharpened once Matt showed them the footage, the cease and desist notice, and the HOA's fantasy map. Troy's eyes narrowed. Classic overreach. She's testing boundaries. That night they staged their quiet watch. 2 men patrolled the fence line. One monitored cameras on a laptop. Another sat in the Suburban with engine off. Troy stayed on the porch beside Matt, beer in hand, eyes locked down the street. When the investor motorcade glided into Palm Dunes, sleek SUVs shining like showroom models, Karen was at the gate in her blazer, greeting them like visiting royalty. But the investor's eyes couldn't miss Matt's property fenced, camera-covered, guarded by men with the unshakable posture only combat can teach. Two dogs lounged at the gate like living gargoyles. Karen's smile faltered. Historians still argue whether empires collapse from external invasion or internal rot. Matt swore he watched both hit her in that single hesitation. The following evening, 3 more HOA figures arrived, the wiry guard again, his broad partner and a so-called compliance officer clutching a folder like it was a holy relic. He tried serving Matt a cease and desist for violating investor visitation ordinances. Matt pointed out the lack of any judge's signature. The man stammered about revised jurisdiction maps conveniently drafted by Karen's husband's firm. It was as flimsy as origami in the rain. When one guard reached for the gate latch, Josh and Ray, 2 of Matt's buddies, materialized. Calm as ever, Ray warned, "You're on the edge of trespass." The guard shoved Josh, "Wrong move." In less time than it takes to sneeze, Josh redirected him to the grass. Ray spun the second into gravel. Troy snagged the compliance officer by the collar before he bolted. 15 seconds, 3 down, all caught on 3 cameras in a live stream. 2,000 viewers watched HOA muscle crumble like stale cornbread. Even better, one investor sedan happened to pass mid-scuffle. He slowed, scribbled notes, and drove on. Later, that investor pulled his $2.4 million pledge for Palm Dunes' community center. If Karen's empire was a castle of glass, this was the Rock. By morning, Sheriff McMillan arrived, mustache bristling like a steel rake. Matt handed over footage, the fake map, and the HOA notices. The sheriff studied them, muttering, "Smells like fraud." His deputy confirmed that Palm Dunes had never been authorized outside their boundary. All their influence zone maps were make-believe, like kids drawing kingdoms in the dirt. Soon after, Karen's Ring camera caught her being led away in cuffs, still shouting as if volume might rewrite reality. The morning after Karen's arrest, Palm Dunes was silent. No patrol SUVs humming by, no clipboard warriors measuring grass blades. Just birdsong sprinklers and Matt's wind chimes. He sat with his coffee, breathing in the kind of peace that doesn't make headlines. But peace was only surface. By noon, the county released a statement HOA security had trespassed and Palm Dunes was under investigation for fraud and misrepresentation. Eli Matt's lawyer filed a civil complaint so long it read like a Shakespearean tragedy: trespassing, harassment, impersonating officers, even illegal surveillance. One video showed Matt taking trash out at 9:03 p.m., annotated as a possible curfew violation. Medieval scholars still argue whether witch hunts were more absurd than HOA surveillance. Matt figured the jury was still out. Public pressure mounted fast. News outlets ran his live streams. A Miami real estate analyst called Palm Dunes a reputational hazard. Investors fled like pigeons from fireworks. By week's end, 2 board members resigned. The third confessed Karen had pushed extraordinary measures none of them wanted. The HOA floated a settlement paired with a gag order. Matt and Eli shredded it metaphorically and literally. Court favored Matt, awarding damages just shy of $300,000 plus legal fees. Karen's assets froze pending a deeper fraud probe. Then came the symbolic moment. Sheriff McMillan shook Matt's hand in front of cameras, apologizing publicly. "You shouldn't have had to fight this fight alone." Behind Matt stood Troy, and the guys steady and unsmiling. Their presence said more than words could. That night, as news tickers rolled and funds cleared, Matt patrolled his property. Dogs at his heels, cicadas buzzing, cameras silent. Freedom isn't always fireworks. It's sometimes the absence of noise, the blessed nothingness. Weeks later, Troy unveiled a steel sign welded to Matt's gate: private property, HOA free zone. Tourists stopped for selfies. Matt laughed when an investor in a pressed suit dropped by, curious card in hand. Ever considered consulting? Communities could use someone who knows boundaries. The guys toasted it around the grill. Josh raised his beer. Rye added to barbecues without bylaws. Troy deadpan to the only HOA that got force reconed into submission. The smoke-curled laughter rolled and the sun sank low. For the first time in weeks, Matt felt the world exhale. And so the chaos dissolved into something gentler. The clang of lawsuits and the bark of patrols faded until they felt like a half-remembered dream. In their place came the steady rhythm of cicadas, the hiss of sprinklers, the soft shuffle of dogs in the grass. Where once each evening carried the tension of headlights at the gate, now the sky stretched open, wide, and forgiving. The porch swing creaked not with suspense, but with the easy sway of someone finally at rest. Matt knew victories rarely come with parades. Sometimes they arrive quietly, hidden in the ordinary, a phone left untouched, a fence line left unchallenged, a night sky without interruption. His land no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt at last like home again. And though the papers would keep running stories, though lawyers would keep shuffling files, he found himself less concerned with headlines and more drawn to the glow of string lights, the warmth of ribs on the grill, and the sound of friends trading jokes older than their scars. The world beyond his fence might still argue over boundaries and bylaws, but here, under Florida's heavy summer air, he found something better. A stillness that didn't demand silence, only respect. A freedom not written in rules but lived in laughter. And as the evening deepened, as the last traces of smoke curled into the stars, he felt the certainty settle in his bones. No curfew, no laminated badge, no fabricated map could touch this. So if you're listening late at night, let this be a reminder. Sometimes the truest peace isn't one in noise, but in the hush that follows. Breathe in, breathe out, and let the quiet hold you.